Administrative Affairs Committee, and we are starting at 7 p.m. via teleconference. As chairman of the Personnel Administrative Affairs Committee, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and in accordance with the governor's emergency number 12 pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that we are providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. We are utilizing Zoom, and the meeting link can be found on the agenda as well as on the city's website. You can also join by telephone by dialing 1-929-205-6099. Meeting ID number 838-3894-6680 and passcode number 801891. The public may also view this meeting on Comcast Stream. We previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing the meeting through public postings. Instructions have also been provided on the City of Nashua's website, www.nashua.nh.gov, and publicly noticed at City Hall and the Nashua Public Library. If anyone is having a problem accessing the meeting via phone or channel 16, please call 603-821-2049 and they will help you connect. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting via the methods mentioned above, the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, please also state whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. Alderwoman Kelly?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Would you call the roll, please?
Sure. Alderman at Large Ben Clemens. Alderman Lopez. Alderman Cleaver. Can everyone hear me?
I can.
Yes.
Okay, I'm just concerned about quorum because I have no one saying they're here yet.
Ben Clemens is muted.
Okay.
I don't see.
Yes, I'm sorry. I was, can you hear me?
I can.
I had to disconnect and rejoin with my phone and the computer because I had a bad internet connection. So I am here. I'm by myself and I can hear everyone.
Thank you, Alderman Clemens. And myself, I am here. I'm alone and I can hear everyone. And I'm just making sure I didn't miss anyone. Calling again to make sure I didn't miss Alderman Lopez or Alderman Cleaver.
Okay. You missed me.
I'm going to ask you next, and then I know our chair is here.
Oh, thank you.
Is that quorum? There's just 3 of us.
Yes.
Yes, it should be. Alderman Karen's here. I'm alone. and I can hear everyone. Alderman Cleaver let me know that he was going to be unable to attend tonight's meeting. So we should be all set.
We have
Thank
3
you.
members present, yes.
Okay, and we have some other members of the board in
We sure
attendance.
do. I see Alderman Dowd is with us. I thought I saw Alderwoman Wilshire. Alderman Jetty is here as well. Alderman Clee. That's it for Alderman. And then also in
Okay.
attendance, we have Director Photo, I see. I see Director Cummings. I'm missing people I know.
Treasurer Fedett,
Yep, see that now? Treasurer Fredette. Did I miss anyone?
David Boucher.
So much easier when we're in a room.
I know.
David Boucher, and I believe the mayor is also in attendance.
Okay, John Griffin.
Oh, there's so many people here.
Hi, this is Carolyn O'Connor. I'm the finance manager, and John Griffin's having some trouble connecting.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. All right.
All right,
Okay.
I think that's I said Dan Hudson, right? I think that's
Yeah.
everybody.
Okay. All right. If we miss anyone, they'll tell us. Thank
I'm sure
you.
they will.
Okay. Now we'll do public comment. Is there anyone out there that would like to speak concerning the 2 items that we will be bringing up this evening? Nobody?
I
Okay.
don't see anyone, June.
Okay. Communication.
We have a communication from David G. Fredette, our treasurer tax collector, regarding deputy treasurer slash deputy tax collector appointment.
Okay. There being no objection, I'll accept the communication and place it on file. If there's no objection, I will allow for suspension of rules for a communication from CFO Griffin that was received after the agenda was prepared. Alderwoman Kelly?
Communication from John Griffin, CFO controller, regarding wastewater rate increase questions.
Okay. There being no objection, I will accept the communication and place it on file. Okay, so we will start this evening with interviews for the office of Deputy Treasurer, Deputy Tax Collector, and Mr. Fedette, our Treasurer Tax Collector, is here, so we will give him the microphone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. On your agenda tonight, as many of you probably know, Ruth Razrick, who is the Deputy Treasurer Deputy Tax Collector, is retiring at the end of February after 45 years with the city. She's going to be greatly missed, of course, but she certainly deserves the next step in her life. A few months ago, we advertised for the position. We created a team for the interviews, myself, John Griffin, CFO, Rose Evans, the senior financial accounting manager, and Ruth Razrick. We received around 18 or 20 applications. We interviewed quite a few people. We narrowed it down to 3. We met all 3 in person. All the other interviews were done through Zoom. And it was a unanimous selection of Patty Barry from the town of Hudson. And I think you have her resume. Patty has been the town clerk tax collector in Hudson for over 14 years. She has a lot of good experience. And we are, I'm personally very happy that she decided to take the position. We all are. And Patty is with us tonight to answer any questions that Personnel Committee might have. But I think I'll stop it right there unless somebody has questions for me.
Okay, so why don't we have Ms. Barry speak, give us a little background, and then if the committee has any questions, we'll let them ask at that point in time. Ms. Barry?
Good evening, and thank you for having me tonight. As David said, I have been the town clerk tax collector for Hudson for 14 years. I was employed by Hudson for 18 total. I've always loved my job as town clerk tax collector. I always loved the tax collection financial side of it more than the town clerk side. This position gives me the opportunity to move away from elections and focus on the part of the job that I love doing the most. And I am very appreciative of David's offer.
Okay, thank you. Any of the committee members have any questions for Ms. Barry?
Madam Chair, I should mention that the mayor has met Patty also.
Okay, thank you for that. Anyone? Any alderman that's not on the committee that has a
well,
question? Oh,
Madam
I'm
Chair.
sorry.
I'm sorry, I might have missed. Ben, did you have your hand raised?
Yes, I do. I'm sorry.
Okay, okay. Alderman
So
Clement.
I just want to make a comment. I really appreciate the fact that you applied for the position. It seems like I read your resume, and you certainly have a great background, lots of municipal experience, and it, going over from really both sides, so you understand how government works from an election standpoint, from a record keeping standpoint, and so I think that will help you even in this position, and you come with the best person to recommend you for a job like this, Mr. Fedett. So I have full confidence. If he's giving you a thumbs up, you're getting a thumbs up from me too. So congratulations, and I certainly will support your appointment.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Alderman Clemens. Anyone else? I would like to echo. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just making sure I didn't miss anyone, and I was going to make a comment, but you go first, please.
Okay. I just wanted to say I echo Alderman Clemens' comments to you, Ms. Barry, because if you have gotten a thumbs up from both Mr. Fedett and Ms. Razowitz, then you are going to be a big asset to the city of Nashua in the tax collector's office. So we want to hopefully welcome you aboard. Obviously, we will take up your nomination later on in this meeting. But thank you for coming in, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you very much.
Alderwoman Kelly.
You covered it all, Alderman Karen. I just wanted to say congratulations. Coming to the forefront of 18 people, and obviously everyone here is excited to bring you into the Nashua government, and I look forward to seeing you there.
Thank you. Thank you. I recognize that, Ruth being there for 45 years, that's some big shoes to fill, and I'm excited to tackle that challenge. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. If there's nothing else, Madam Clerk, we'll go on to application to license hawkers, peddlers, vendors license.
I lost the script, but I assume there are none. One more.
Okay, thank you. Okay, appointments by the Board of Aldermen. Madam Clerk, could you make a motion?
Yeah, just give me 1 second, June. I'm trying to find the window. 1 second.
Okay, no problem.
I can make the motion if you want.
Sure, thank you, Alderman Clemens.
I would move to recommend the following confirmation: Patricia Barry to the office of Deputy Treasurer, Tax Collector, with an indefinite term to expire
By roll call.
or to not expire.
To not expire by roll call. Thank you, Alderman Clements. I did find my script.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
All right, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Clements.
Yes.
Alderman Kelly is a yes. Alderman Karen?
Yes.
And we have 3 yays.
Okay, motion carried. Unfinished business.
We have none.
New business resolution.
There are none.
Okay. New business ordinances.
None.
Okay, so we will move, would you make a motion to take
Sure.
off the table? Thank you.
I'm going to move to take O2040 off the table by roll call.
Okay, you heard the motion. Do we have any comments? Okay, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Clements.
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly is a yes. Alderman Karen.
Yes.
And that is 3 yays.
Okay, motion carried.
So then
Alderwoman Kelly.
I'll make a motion for final passage of O2040, increasing sewer usage fees, rates, and charges.
Okay, fine.
Madam
So,
Madam
I'm
Chair,
sorry. Yeah,
it's Dave Fredette. If you don't mind, I think Patty and I will skip the part on the sewer fee increase.
yes, you may.
Okay.
Yes, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so I know there are several people from BPW there, and Mayor, I understand you're there. Did you want to speak first concerning the questions that
Yes,
the
ma'am.
committee has?
Yes, Madam Chair. I thought I would briefly give you an overview of the subject and then let Director Photo begin with the presentation.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Mayor.
Well, the wastewater fund, as you know, it pays for the sewage treatment plant, its operations, improvements required, and also the entire sewer system, the sewers we have all over the city, their replacement, their repair, and everything associated with that. Now, we currently are the city, Public Works, the wastewater treatment plant, is in the process of trying to finalize a permit for the application for the operation of the sewer plant, the wastewater plant. And of course, that has been pending for over 2 years now, about 2.5 years. And as these discussions have continued, we had hoped to get the final permit long before now. But as these discussions have continued, the EPA and DES, the State Department of Environmental Services, have increasingly raised issues which the city is trying to address. But we are certainly under pressure from them to make certain improvements. Now, just as background, some years ago, way before Director Photo or me and most of the members here, the city made the decision to try to avoid separation of storm and sewers in the inner neighborhoods of the city where we have a combined system by developing a so-called wet water approach, which basically stores storm water in a huge holding tank and then waits for the storm to be over and releases it more gradually into the river so that it can be treated. Now, this has been, it may have been a mistake to try to undertake this because this was a project that cost tens of millions of dollars. And in the end, we may be under pressure to separate anyway, but that still remains to be seen. Manchester did make the decision to separate, and there could be problems related to separation, which we could discuss, that would not be created by the approach we took. So it's kind of it's unclear whether the city really made the right decision or not. But we're clearly under pressure from the EPA regarding these issues. So we need to, and we have a lot of improvements that are going to be required to be made and that are being made, mandated by our permit, by a consent decree with the EPA, mandated by the potential of another EPA enforcement action. I mean, there are various things that could happen, but we need to continue to make substantial improvements. Now, Mr. Boucher has done a great job in the time that he's been at the plant. He knows a lot about it. He's doing a very good job running it, but it was allowed to fall into a very sad state of disrepair. That was discovered during Mayor Lozo's administration, and she and some aldermen acted very aggressively to begin the repairs, but the repairs are ongoing and expensive. Now, the DES, the State Environmental Agency, has pointed out something that they feel is a serious deficiency with respect to our efforts. They believe that our sewer fees are far too low. And they point out that, and you'll see this in the presentation, they point out that they are far, far less than other communities around southern New Hampshire. And they believe if we're going to make the improvements that they are going to require, that the current sewer rates will not be sufficient to meet their expectations. Number two, there is a federal law, which as we understand it, includes a recommendation, not a mandate, but still a law that makes a recommendation that a certain level of reserves be on hand in any wastewater enterprise fund such as ours. And the number is definitely way into the millions. Now, meaning that we should have that much on hand, which we do not have, in case there is a big emergency. So there is the proposal to increase the sewer fees to get closer, but not equal to the other communities that the DES and the EPA have pointed out have more adequate fees in their view. This would get us partway there, and also to meet the needs of the improvements that are required to be made. And Mr. Boucher is going to be detailing much of that and telling you about, in a more, I think, understandable way than you heard last time, about what the various improvements are and how much they might cost. So if we didn't pass this would, the whole system would go into deficit, which is not where you want your sewer system to be. If this ever stopped working or was somehow its functionality was impaired, either through a disaster of some kind or through EPA action or something like that, the entire city would shut down without a sewer system. So this is clearly something we need to take good care of. With that, I will give you, I think that gives you an overview. Some of these points will be elaborated upon by our presentation, but with that, I will give you Director Photo, who's going to take you through the presentation, and also Mr. Boucher and others that are knowledgeable about various aspects of it.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, President Wilshire, Madam Chair, and committee members. With me this evening is Dave Boucher, our wastewater superintendent, Noelle Osborne, our plant operations supervisor, Dan Hudson, our city engineer, Frank Ayotte, who is our consultant from Hazen and Sawyer, and John Griffin, CFO, and Carolyn O'Connor, our finance and administration manager. We have a presentation for you this evening that we believe will answer your questions and address your concerns. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dave Boucher, who will begin the presentation.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I'm David Boucher, the wastewater superintendent. And in the first part of the presentation, I will be giving a general overview of the wastewater department. which will include a picture tour through the treatment process. And also on some of the slides, we've included dates of last upgrades and also project costs. So as we go through these slides, I will be describing the pictures that are in them. So we'll go to the next slide. So the wastewater facility sits on 28 acres located off Sawmill Road. Its purpose is to collect and treat wastewater. And we serve approximately 89,000 residents in the city of Nashua. We also service the town of Hudson, parts of Merrimack, and Tingsboro, Mass. And our goal is to deliver clean, clear water into the Merrimack. Okay, also outside the treatment facility, we also maintain the collection system, which includes 446 miles of sewer mains and interceptors. We have 13 pump stations we manage, 9 combined sewer overflow structures, and 8 siphon chambers. Go to the next slide. So these are 2 pump stations we recently upgraded on National Street and Watson Street. So we're near completion on 6 of the pump stations. We still have 7 left to upgrade. Some of the upgrades include relocating pumps above ground when possible. We've also updated controls and alarms and added second pumps for redundancies to avoid sewage backing up into the streets and possibly homes. Go to the next slide. So this is a history of major expansions at the wastewater treatment facility. So in 1959, the first wastewater tanks were installed. In 1974, the facility expanded after the implementation of the Clean Water Act in 1972. In 1989, a secondary treatment process was built to meet more stringent discharge regulations. And that would be the large circular tanks and rectangular tanks at the bottom of the picture. In 2001, an anaerobic digestion complex was installed as a method to treat and reduce the volume of sludge. That would be located in the upper right-hand corner of the picture. 2009, the wet weather facility was built to treat additional stormwater flows. And it activates when the main facility reaches the maximum flow of 50 million gallons. So this facility can treat up to 60 million gallons. The main facility has a design flow of 16 million gallons per day. And our overall facility, which includes the wet weather facility, has a peak design flow of 110 million gallons a day. Currently, our average flow is around 12 million gallons a day. The total flow is 4,611 million gallons per year. We also take in 800,000 gallons roughly per year of septic tank waste from Nashua and Hudson residents. So this is the beginning of the tour through the treatment process. And all of the flow from the city passes through these mechanical bar screens here in the picture. So this equipment removes large debris from wastewater 2 stories below grade and brings it to ground level for disposal. This process is essential. It protects downstream equipment and it maintains flow through the facility. So we'll go to the next slide. So once the flow passes through the screens, it is pumped to a higher elevation through raw sewage pumps for further processing. So a failure of these pumps would cause sewage to back up into the city. So it's essential that these remain well maintained. Go to the next slide. The flow then passes through the grit process, where sand and other inorganics are removed. They're washed through the automated system pictured on the right, and then it's shipped off site. Next slide. So after the grit removal process, the flow passes through the primary clarifiers, where some organic sludge and grease is removed for further processing. So this upgrade is near completion, and it consists of bringing electrical controls above ground, replacing all the aged mechanical infrastructure in all the tanks, and making structural tank modifications for improved treatment. Next slide. The next process is aeration, where microbiological life further treats the wastewater. So this process requires a constant supply of air using high efficiency blowers and a sophisticated computer programming control system. Go to the next slide. And after aeration, the solids settle out in the secondary clarifiers, these tanks here, and are removed for further processing. So in the background of this picture is our pump building, which has 2 stories below ground. It houses 7 sludge pumps and 7 chlorine disinfection pumps as well. Go to the next slide. So the clear liquid that leaves the secondary clarifier flows through the chlorine contact chambers, where chlorine is added for disinfection and sodium bisulfite is added to remove the residual chlorine prior to discharging to the Merrimack River, which is kind of located beyond the tree line in the background. The building to the right is the sodium bisulfite storage and pumping building. And the little blue building is where we sample to meet regulations before it's discharged to the river. Okay, next slide. So all the sludge collected from previous processes are sent to the anaerobic digester, where it is mixed and heated at 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So a byproduct of this process is methane gas or biogas, which is stored in the tank pictured to the right. So we recently did a project. We coated the inside and outside of this tank, and we replaced the rubber diaphragm on the inside of the tank. Any excess gas is burned off in the flare shown in the picture, and we do have an air permit for the release of the emissions from this flare. Go to the next slide. Our energy recovery facility upgrade is also near completion. This facility will blend the natural gas we receive from the street and biogas created on site through the blending skid seen on the picture on the left, and will fuel the generators seen in the picture on the right. So when this is complete, this project will result in energy cost savings and will power the entire digester complex. Next slide. So once the sludge leaves the digester complex, it is sent through these inclined screw presses to remove any excess water before trucked off site for beneficial reuse on farmland. So when the sludge leaves the facility, it's leaving as a certified Class B biosolid. Next slide. The water booster station houses and controls, it houses pumps and controls. It boosts the city water pressure to levels that all our processes within the facility require. So this is also a recent project that we had. It brought all the equipment from below ground to above ground in a precast climate controlled building. This was done to resolve past equipment failures and corrosion issues. So this was also done to stay in compliance with water regulations as well. Next slide. So as mentioned earlier, the wet weather facility can treat up to 60 million gallons. A recent upgrade in this facility was the addition of 2 mechanical bar screens, and one of them shown in the right-hand side. So these operate similar to the ones I showed at the beginning of the presentation. The investment into this equipment will maximize the flows through this facility and in turn minimize the potential discharge through CSO discharge points out in the streets. Next slide. So this is a picture of our screening and disinfection facility. It's located off of Bancroft Street. It's also known as our CSO site number 14. This is one of our more sophisticated CSO sites that we maintain. The building includes automated controls, pumps, and chemical storage. So that was kind of a quick snapshot of a lot of our assets. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to our operations supervisor, Noelle Osborne. She'll take the next few slides.
Thanks, Dave. I'm Noelle Osborne, Operations Supervisor for Wastewater. What you will notice from my few slides is the complexity of the plant that we just saw through Dave's presentation is definitely mirrored by the complexity of the regulations that we're under. I'm going to take you through the permits first. The first one is the NPDES permit. That's the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System. This one's issued by the United States EPA, but includes state standards as New Hampshire has limitations that are stricter than the EPA's. This is our all-encompassing permit. It reflects site-specific conditions, so it's specific to Nashua and allows us to discharge into the Merrimack River. It regulates the process through the facility, what we discharge from the facility, as well as the biosolid produced, the management of the collection system, and the discharges from our combined sewer overflows. The next one is the New Hampshire SQC. That's the sludge quality certification. And while the NPDES permit does regulate the basics of our biosolid production, we applied for and were granted additional qualifications for our biosolids, giving us that Class B status that Dave mentioned earlier. This means that we have additional processes that we have to undergo and testing requirements, but in the end, it grants us the ability to beneficially reuse the product with land application. That allows us to reclaim the non-renewable resources in the biosolids, such as phosphorus, and it's a benefit to the landowners. The Mass AOS, Massachusetts Application of Suitability, is essentially the same as the New Hampshire SQC, but allows us to also land apply in Massachusetts. So they're two separate regulations. Air permit through the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. We have on site 3 large emergency generators, as the facility must continue to run even when there's no electricity from the main grid. 2 energy recovery generators, which are still under construction, but we hope to have operational soon. And multiple odor control units that help to remove pollutants called mercaptans from the air, as well as that flame that you saw earlier from Dave's presentation. All of the discharges from these, all of the emissions are regulated through this air permit and require monthly and annual inspections, testing, report, and a lot of upkeep and maintenance. AST and UST certifications, it's above and underground storage tank. Each of the 3 emergency generators requires large quantities of fuel to be on hand at all times. These are stored in both the above and underground storage tanks on site, and those require regular inspections and maintenance. The MSGP, multi-sector general permit. The wastewater facility, due to the nature of the equipment that we have on site and the large footprint, is considered an industrial site through that MSGP, that permit. It has its own stormwater collection system as well as 3 outfalls, and those are all regulated under this MSGP permit and require testing, inspection, and reporting. MS4, NPDES Phase 2, that's the municipal separate storm sewer system. So this is the permit that regulates the stormwater collection system throughout the city of Nashua. It includes things like reducing inflow and infiltration, as well as stormwater treatment, testing, and reporting. And then the Hazardous Waste SQG and RCRA RCRA, Small Quantity Generator and Resource Conservation and Recovery Act. So the facility does produce a small amount of hazardous waste in the laboratory as byproducts to test perform. And this certification just lets the state know that we produce this. We have the training to management and we report it to them. The governing documents. So within the permits are requirements to create governing documents. These documents are written for the city of Nashua, either internally or through a consultant, and are specific to our needs and abilities to accomplish tasks. The first one is the collection system O&M. Through the CMOM, the Capacity Management Operation and Maintenance section of the NPDES permit, we are required to determine specific achievable goals for the management of the collection system. For example, how many linear feet we intend to video of the sewers annually, what is our standard operating procedure for cleaning the sewer, and a potential replacement schedule for areas that have been failing. Again, we write this so we can tailor it to what we believe to be economically feasible. However, the EPA and DES have final approvals on whether or not they believe it to be enough. The long-term control plan / integrated plan is through the CMOM, the NPDES permit, the MS4 permit. This looks ahead. What are we going to do moving forward for long-term control of CSOs as well as stormwater management? The consent decree through NIPD's, but separate, it is a legal document issued by the EPA specifically requiring us to take additional steps towards the long-term control of the CSOs. Our last consent decree was from 2003 and was the specific driver for projects like the screening and disinfection facility, the wet weather treatment facility, the Harbor Ave sewer separation, as well as many others. We expect to see another following the completion of this one. Post-construction monitoring plan, PCMP. This is one of the final stages of that existing consent decree. It was written by Nashua as a way to measure the effectiveness of the projects completed for the CSO long-term control. And we've been waiting to kick off the PCMP following the completion of several citywide projects. Stormwater management plan is a requirement of the MS4 permit and is a plan for the mitigation of stormwater pollution. It looks forward at different projects, cleaning schedules on catch basins and other structures, green infrastructure, and more. The illicit discharge detection and elimination program is another MS4 requirement, providing a plan for looking for illegal connections of stormwater to our system and removing them. NOI is the notice of intent. These are just documents used to declare Nashua's intention to comply to the specific general permits, such as the MS4 and MSGP. The SWPPP, Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan. This is through the MSGP and is written for the wastewater facility site. It includes inspection requirements, testing, education, and training requirements. And then the SPCC, the Spill Prevention Control and Countermeasure Plans. This is through the AST, UST certifications, as well as US EPA requirements, and is necessary of any facility that has the capability of leaking large quantities of oil or fuel to the stormwater system and eventually to the river. Because of the quantity of fuel on site for the emergency generators, we fall into this category. This again has inspections, reports, tests, and maintenance requirements. So what I want to look at next is that letter that Director Photo received from Director O'Donovan. He's the water director at New Hampshire DES. And we wanted to highlight a couple of lines from his letter for you. One of the most important things a utility can do is to ensure its long-term financial and infrastructure sustainability. Nashua still has much work to do to address its remaining CSOs, which will prompt EPA to issue new enforcement action. Nashua will receive a new NIPD's permit in the next few years, potentially requiring additional upgrades to Nashua's wastewater treatment facility to ensure the reduction of pollutants entering the Merrimack River. New Hampshire DES's rates and sustainability performance dashboard clearly shows that Nashua's current sewer rates are significantly lower, in fact, almost 50% than the state average and median. Nashua is in the red, meaning that Nashua's current rates are not sufficient to cover the cost of operations. Next slide, thank you. Nashua's current rates are significantly lower than one would expect for a community of Nashua's size and infrastructure. New Hampshire DES realizes it is never a good time to raise rates, but it's expensive to invest. It's less expensive to invest in infrastructure today than it will be tomorrow. At this point, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Frank Ayotte of Hazen and Sawyer.
Mr. Ayotte, you are on mute.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Over the next 6 slides, I'm going to talk a little bit about the planned future major capital expenditures required to protect public health in the city. Then we're going to compare Nashua's residential sewer rates with select cities and see how they compare. I'm going to go over the proposed increases from 2021 through 2023. Discuss the affordability metrics as outlined by the Environmental Protection Agency for the lowest quintile of household income for the city of Nashua. And lastly, discuss what planning efforts the city will be undertaking to plan for future capital investments in the development through an integrated planning framework and the development of a dynamic sewer rate model. So with that, let's get right into it. I had presented this slide on previous presentations, and I've updated a little bit. In a prior presentation, we had about 52 million of upcoming capital investments over the next 5 years. And since then, we've identified additional projects that'll be happening over the next 5 to 15 years, depending on how these are scheduled. But it's over $85 million in upcoming capital investments. And they're all bulleted, as you can see on the slide. There's significant investments in the city's wastewater infrastructure. And I can't express enough that these projects, these expenditures are required to replace the aging equipment and infrastructure that keep the city in compliance with environmental permits and avoid costly fines from permit violations as a result of failed infrastructure. Any permit violations, if you don't keep up with this planned infrastructure, you run the risk of fines, and that's just throwing cash out the window. Next slide, please. So how does Nashua's residential rates compare with its neighboring cities? In comparison, based on 2020 rates, based on an average water consumption of 20 CCF, you can see that the household quarterly bill for Nashua as compared to Manchester, Concord, Keene, Portsmouth, Salem, New Hampshire, and even Lowell, Massachusetts is significantly lower than those peer cities. The average quarterly bill for all the cities, not including Nashua, $142.93. And the 2018 New Hampshire state average quarterly bill, $169.61. Next slide, please. So the proposed sewer increases through 2021 through 2023, it sounds like a large increase when we say a 20% increase and followed by a 15% increase, but the incremental dollar values are not that significant. If you look at the 2020 quarterly bill at $79.14, for 2021 that would increase to $94.97, about $15 or so. From there on, $94.97 to $109.22, and then no increase in 2023. Again, I have some notes at the bottom of the slide that the quarterly bill for comparison cities is much higher than that in 2020 as compared to the 2023 rate at $109.22 that Nash was proposing, and still well below the 2018 rate. So what's considered affordable? The EPA considers affordability, has an affordability metric of 2% of the household income as regarded in the lowest quintile of residents. So as you can see, the lowest household income earners in the 20th percentile, you see the 2020 is in dark blue, 2021 is in teal, 2022 and 23 is in green and orange. And you can see even in the 2022 and 2023 at 1.4% is still lower than the 2% affordability metric that the EPA uses as a metric in the lowest household income earners. Next slide, please. So I believe Alderman Dowd had asked this question about planning in our last meeting. So what is the city doing to plan future improvements, and how is that going to work in the future? Well, Nashua has currently developed what's called an integrated planning framework and a dynamic sewer rate model to comply with its consent decree with the US EPA. And what that does is the integrated planning framework is an approved planning framework by the EPA that allows the city to prioritize its capital projects that best address its most pressing system needs as determined by Nashua using city developed criteria. So it'll include the wastewater projects, long-term control plan capital projects that have yet to be determined. It'll be linked to a dynamic sewer rate model that is being developed by the city with our assistance, and it'll allow the city to defer capital projects that are determined to confer fewer benefits for similar investment costs. So the idea would be to spread these future capital projects, do the ones that are the most pressing, most bang for the bucks upfront, and spread the others out over time so that you're not seeing large fluctuations in the sewer rate from year to year. The idea is to smooth that cost curve such that you could, say, apply a cost of living increase on a year-to-year basis and hopefully be able to fund all your capital projects well into the future. Next slide, please. So just to conclude what I've said, planning rate increases cover the cost to finance the capital investments that are required to comply by these regulatory permits and avoid costly fines due to violations. With respect to the city's rates, the sewer charges in 2023 are still significantly lower than the peer utility charges in 2020 and well below the 2018 New Hampshire state average. By the EPA's metrics, Nashua's rates are still considered affordable by the 2% affordability metric rule. And with respect to planning, Nashua is developing this integrated planning framework to further reduce rate impacts on its constituents. And this planning initiative will include all the capital projects linked to the wastewater infrastructure and long-term control planning process into a dynamic sewer rate model to accurately forecast future rates. Thanks.
Okay, anyone else from the group that has anything else to say?
Yes, Alderman Karen, I believe CFO Griffin has a couple of slides to present as well.
Okay, thank you. CFO Griffin? I think he's muted. Is there anyone there that can speak on behalf of Mr. Griffin?
Carolyn O'Connor, do you feel comfortable speaking to his?
Yeah, I was unmuting, sorry. John
Okay.
says that you need to unmute him. Can you try unmuting him? Otherwise, I could speak to this. Okay.
Hello,
Oh, there he is.
Yep, we can hear you.
technology. Sorry, I apologize, Madam Chairman.
That's
I,
okay.
My hotspot was not able to connect, but if you can hear me, I can proceed. Thank you very much.
Yes, you're welcome.
So as we discussed the last time, and it was kind of hard to kind of visualize, I developed three options. One would be a January 1st increase, second would be the April 1st increase, and the third would be the July 1st increase. And as you can see, fiscal 21 end of year, the only one that provides a positive balance is option one. And it's about a $718,000 difference between each option. So if we take the 1.4 million expected in fiscal 21 we'd end up with a $470,000 balance if everything worked according to this plan. If we put it in April, it'd be 247,000, and then in July it'd be 965 negative balance. And as Mr. Ayotte indicated and others, the difference in magnitude on the annual bill is $15.83. So that's the first analysis. And if we want to put up the second analysis, I can go through that as well. I'm not seeing it on the screen, so it's the way I actually have it through my internet, but
We see it
Is
on
this-
the screen.
the second one, the larger analysis,
Yep,
wastewater fund balance analysis to target.
yes,
As was described, there generally is a balance that's retained in the wastewater fund. And the source of America's Water Infrastructure Act, dated October 2018, that calls for 4 months of operating expenditures, 25% of capital costs. So as you can see in fiscal 21, with a balance of slightly less than $500,000, we're about 11 million shy of that target. Not meant to be, absolute, but it does show that our methodology of increasing rates when we actually need them, in this case, we're very close to that, to zero, which would leave us at $12 million shy of the target. As you go forward to the right, the 20% increase in January of 21 and the 15% increase in January 22, that's going to shave that deficit in half, bringing the number down to about 6 million, 5.965. And as Alderman Clemmons indicated the last time, pursuing maybe an annual increase, I'm showing with no increase the degradation of the balance from 23, 24, 25. I've done some modeling, and what would be needed is 6% in 23, 4% in 24, and 4% in 25 to get those numbers close to the targets. Not sure if there's an appetite for that, but that's basically how the model would work. And as I mentioned, we haven't gone below zero since 08, 09, but we should be more than $1 million in the fund balance as we head towards sustainability and stability. And that's what I have at this point. And I answered several questions in collaboration with others. So if there's any questions on the question responses, I'd be more than happy to talk to it. Thank you.
okay. So would I assume that that's the end of the presentation?
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. Yes, it is.
Okay, so do I have questions from any member of the committee? First,
Alderman Clemmons has his hand up.
I do
okay,
too.
Alderman Clemmons.
Oh, and Alderman Lopez
thank
has
you.
joined us.
Alderman Clemmons,
you.
you're first. You're welcome.
So, if you don't mind, if we could put that last graphic back up, if that's okay.
Certainly, if we can. Mr. Griffin?
Yeah, that would be my colleague Diane Thibodeau would be putting that slide up. I don't have any connectivity. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, let me, okay, here it comes.
Go ahead.
Um,
Why don't you ask, oh, okay, she's working on
Yep.
it. Why don't you ask your question, Alderman Clemmons, while she's
So,
putting it up on the screen?
so
There it
this, Mr. Griffin, this assumes the 20% and the 15% increased January 1st, and then in fiscal year 23, as far as that target amount, we'd be about $141,000 beneath that.
That's correct.
And what I want to understand and just be clear is you're saying that as of fiscal 23, if we were to do a 6, 4, and 4, at least for as far as you can project right now, that would keep that balance around that even mark, around that 141?
Yeah, so in some cases, it's slightly more than, so it feeds off the target wastewater fund balance, total wastewater fund
Yep.
balance target. So in 23, we're 141 short of the 8.3 million. And then the 9.4, we'd be close to it, is what I'm saying, because there is no increases in 23 and 24. It starts losing its balance, its fund balance.
Right, but you're saying if we were to do smaller increases at that point, that it wouldn't do that, correct?
That's correct. That's correct. The 6, 4, and 4, as Mr. Ayotte indicated, to the extent the model is more sophisticated than we're currently using, as he mentioned, there might be abilities to defer certain capital expenses that are currently being funded in the model that we distributed, but may not need to be funded in that short a time period. But the answer to your question is correct.
That answered my question perfectly. And so basically, from what I can tell here, and this is my, one man's opinion, but if we take a little pain in 21 and 22 with the 20% and the 15, we can get to a point in 2023 where we can, have minimal increases and not these, over the top gut punches. So, I think that's a better goal for us. I think that's a better goal for the city, because I think it puts us in a better place where we can budget this year to year, know where we're at, have a good balance in there. And like you said, if we can even find even more efficiencies and things like that, maybe those rates won't even be the 6 and the 4 or whatever. But that, to me, that's the way to go. And although nobody wants a 20% increase, I certainly can. We got to get to the point where we're able to do this sustainably. So I can understand the need to get there, and we got to do what we got to do. So thank you, Mr. Griffin. That was the information I was looking for.
You're welcome.
Okay, anyone else from the committee that has a question? Oh, Alderman Lopez.
Hello.
You're here.
Yep.
Go ahead.
So I guess first, I guess a comment. Earlier it was said that the rate increase wasn't that much when you look at the total bill. And I think that the rate increase is significant, but I agree that the total bill, it's not going to be the largest hit to people's pocketbook, wallet, whatever. But I do think we need to be conscious of the fact that people are in a time of economic uncertainty, and that they are going to be very, very sensitive to any kind of increases like this. So I can see the value of trying to reduce the curve. And in fact, I appreciate that. I think with the solid waste fees we've talked about in the past, we've advocated for doing more incremental increases instead of sudden every 2 or 3 years, a larger increase. I think the case has definitely been made very effectively by DPW that our solid waste, our wastewater treatment services are very comprehensive, that we get a lot of bang for our buck. But I think it's also worth noting that while our wastewater treatment fees are much lower than the average for the region, there are a lot of other expenses in Nashua that are much higher, such as the average rent rate. And these costs will likely be passed down in some form or the other. So those are things we have to be conscious of. But going back to that economic uncertainty, a lot of that's coming from COVID-19. A lot of that's coming from periods of reduced employment or reduced income that we are taking comprehensive national steps right now to ameliorate the pandemic, and ideally to intervene before another one comes forward. There are resources for people that are available. And I guess my question is really just to confirm the obvious, that this would constitute a utilities payment and would be eligible for assistance for people who aren't able to reach this, or maybe the wastewater treatment fee in combination with other expenses might be something that they need to be looking at. They can apply for utility assistance on those grounds. Director Fota, this is typically billed as a utility?
You know, I don't know the question, the answer to your question, Alderman Lopez. I'm not sure if CFO Griffin or the mayor know the answer to that, but I'm not sure if there's assistance available.
I know there are. I'm just asking for confirmation that this is classified as a utility.
Yes, it is. Yes.
Okay.
Sorry. Yes, it is.
I do take it for granted that as a social worker, I'm constantly finding these programs, but there are COVID relief programs for utility assistance particularly, and for anybody who's behind on rent. So that's probably something that if somebody's watching this and wants more information on, you could approach our city welfare department on, or check their website, because there is information on there. But so I'm sensitive to the needs of wastewater treatment. And to be honest, I'd rather use the opportunity to put revenue in our own contingency funding than put it into somebody's bank for a fine. So I'm in favor of this as well. It looks like a lot when it's, you know, printed on paper because the rate increase is, but the ultimate bill and what you're getting is below the competitive rates around the city or around the state. And I think there's definitely a well-stated case here for it.
Okay, thank you, Alderman Lopez. Is there anyone else from the committee that has a question? Okay, anyone who is from the board who has any questions? Would you raise your hand and let Alderwoman Kelly see?
Alderman Dowd has his hand up.
Okay, Alderman Dowd.
Yes, I just wanted to say that that was an excellent presentation. It answered a lot of the questions that I had relative to the infrastructure plan, and also the expenditures that are outlined are all legitimate and necessary, and it looks like the rate increases are necessary. In discussions with CFO Griffin, from a marketing perspective, it makes a lot more sense when we're presenting this to the public, instead of saying it's a 20% increase using the $15 a quarter or the $60 a year. It's more palatable to people when you present it that way, because the minute you mention 20%, they're going to tie it to other things and cause a lot of undue concern. I think at the same time, you also want to present when it gets out in the public, and hopefully the union leader can help us with that regard, and possibly the Telegraph, that if we show the rates of the other cities as was shown in your presentation, it also makes it a lot more palatable to people. So the original concern was the fact that we were assigning this fee increase couple days after its effect, and catching people, particularly condo associations, after their budgets for the year had been set. But it is something that is obviously necessary. I totally agree with trying to level out the increases after the 20 and the 15%. So if we look at it and we have to have a 2% or a 4% increase every year for the next 5 to 10 years, let's do it that way. That way you're not hitting them with a proposed 20%, even if it's $15 a quarter or 20% increase. You know, a 4% or a 2% increase is relatively small money. So I think you've answered my questions, and I know that we do an excellent job, and it answered my questions relative to the permits that were coming down the pike, and the fact that I agree with the other speakers that we'd rather pay the increases in the infrastructure cost than pay money into a fine. So thank you for the presentation. Good job.
Alderman Clee also has her hand up.
Alderman Clee?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to echo the previous speaker's comments, and one of the comments that Alderman Lopez had made relative to that these are hardened times, and they are. Sometimes a $3 increase on anything is hard, but I also think it is something that's necessary. I don't want to have to advocate for more cost to our citizens, but it makes more sense, I think, as Alderman Clemens had said, it's better that we pay this than to end up having to pay it in fines. I don't want to see something like that. And as a state rep, and knowing that the state has, here in New Hampshire, we do have some higher standards than the feds. And while I think many of those are good because it makes our water better and our land and so on better, I know that it hurts the municipalities. So we have to do what we have to do to keep our licenses, to keep going. And I believe it was the mayor as well as others that said, our sewer system goes down, our city gets shut down. And ultimately, I think the residents would rather pay that $15 a quarter than to have our sewer system down. So I do hope that you make a positive recommendation on this. Thank you.
Okay,
Alderman
thank
Kelly,
you.
And then myself.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Alderwoman Kelly.
I said Alderman Jettie and then myself.
Oh, okay, Alderman Jettie.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I was struck by what the mayor said about his questioning whether our decision to do this, to not separate our sewer system, whether that is going to whether we're going to be able to continue with that decision in the future. I have a concern about, if I understand this correctly, our decision not to separate stormwater from sewerage, I understand that when there's a demand, an excessive demand upon the system, like a big rainstorm, for example, we end up dumping, I think, raw sewage into the rivers. I'm not sure that's accurate, but I think it is from what I've heard, and that I have a great concern about that, and whether or not eventually we're going to have to separate stormwater from sewerage, and whether this large investment that we've been making over the years and we continue to make is going to be sustainable. But that's not the discussion we're having tonight. What we're talking about tonight is these rates, these increases, and I think the presentation, I knew before tonight's presentation that we need to put a lot of money into our wastewater system for it to survive, and for it to be any chance of being sustainable. And I know that that what we're doing is completely justified. The cost that that we're undergoing are they're completely justified. the only question I have is, how we're deciding to raise this money. I thought that Alderman Dowd raised a good point at the last meeting about the effect that this has on, on all of the ratepayers, but especially, condominium associations that, have already established their budgets for 2021. And for large apartment complexes, some of them, they pay the water bills for their tenants, and including the sewer bill. So, this is something that they're going to have to deal with. Their rents are determined, usually at least a year in advance. So that's something that property owners are going to have to, landlords are going to have to deal with as well. And so I thought Alderman Dowd, raised a good point about how, isn't there a way that we can lessen the impact? Several people have pointed out, we're talking about this rate increase going into effect, January 1st, we're already into the year. And, how can we lessen the impact? And, at the last meeting, Alderman Dowd and Alderman Clemens talked about maybe, delaying the increase for a quarter or half a year. And I'm wondering, is there a way that we could raise the money that we need by, issuing a bond to make sure that, that the money we need to, to have that reserve that's being we're being told, we should have. Would it be possible for us to issue a bond? The city is able to borrow money at a very attractive rate. Could we issue a bond, to take care of this upcoming year, and then put in increases in subsequent years when people would have, proper notice that this is coming. My other question is, we're talking about, one of the charts, I think the last chart that was put on the screen talked about a 5-year plan. And, even the 20% this year, 15% next year, and, 0 for the following 3 years, we're going to end up in a deficit. We're still going to, that's not going to be sustainable. We're still going to have to raise rates in the future. And CFO Griffin talked about an additional 6%, 4% increase. So, I'm not a finance guy, but, my arithmetic says that we're going to be, 20% this year, 15% next year, 6%, 4%, 4%. That adds up to 49% over 5 years. Could we, would it make any sense to raise that same 50% over the 5 years, by doing it, maybe like 10% per year, still end up with the 50%. I don't know if that makes any sense to CFO Griffin, but that's my questions. Those are my questions.
Okay, so Mr. Griffin, can you answer that question, or is there anyone from your group that would like to answer Alderman Jetty's question?
Madam Chair, can you still hear me?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. So Alderman Jetty raises some very good points. The beauty of I hate to use the word beauty, but the reason for the 20% increase and followed by the 15 is those dollars that are raised with those increases are going to last forever. And they're going to begin in 21, not 22, not 23. A 10% across the board is not going to come in with the amount of revenue that we need to get to the point that Alderman Clemmons and I were discussing. Now, I want to clear one issue up. The amount over and under the target, that means we have a healthy balance. We're just not at the target. And then as far as, so hopefully that makes sense. The red numbers that are shown on that last chart that went up at the bottom where it says amount over or under the target, those are the amounts under the target, not the balance in the fund. The projected wastewater fund balance is right above it, and it's a positive number. As far as bonding, you couldn't use a general obligation bond. You'd have to use a revenue bond, which we really don't need. If we're talking about a year or less, we're not going to need it to issue a bond. I'm not sure if those are all the questions, but those would be the thoughts at this point.
Okay, Alderman Judge, does that answer your question?
Yeah, so if I could follow up. So when you say we wouldn't need to raise a bond, so are you saying that we have enough money to take care of the first year without issuing a bond, and we could delay this for a year and then start with the 20%, 15%?
Madam Chair, if I may, I wouldn't recommend that because we'd be losing millions. We'd be delaying the collection of $1.4 million if we went without an increase until July 1, we'd delay 1.4 million of revenue, which helps get the balance above zero, above the negative number on July 1st. What I'm saying with the bond is it's not big enough. It's not, you've probably heard of cities and towns that maybe collect their taxes in arrears. They've gone to mechanisms such as quarterly tax billing or revenue anticipation notes that could lead to a bond, but there has to be a revenue generating service that's provided. This would be the best the options that are option one is the best financially at this point.
It might be the best.
Jetty?
Yeah, it might be the best financially for the city. I'm just wondering. I'm just questioning whether it's the best financially for the the residents. But thank you.
Right, and that's why. Well, just one point on that. That's why Alderman Dowd, who had a conversation with me, he was suggesting, just like they do in many. That's why I gave you the Penachuk site. Dollars per month, dollars per quarter. Excuse me. You lead with those if they're small numbers. So, for example, a 2% tax increase could be 5 times the size of a 20% sewer rate increase. So those are the optics that we needed to put something in to calculate what the revenue is going to be, and then you calculate the impact on a typical customer using 20 CF a quarter. Thank you.
Okay, all set, Alderman Jetty?
Yep, thank you very much, Madam Chairman.
You're welcome. Alderwoman Kelly?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to make a few comments. I just wanted to thank everyone for their thoughtful responses to the questions and presentations. I think it made a lot of sense to hear, what's going on and where these increases are coming from. My one question is around, the thing that we all keep circling around. So if we wanted to make this more even so that it doesn't hit people with a 20% every 4 or 5 years, the answer to the question that we received by email was that it's just never been proposed. So would that be something that would come from you, or would this board have to propose something that evens it out a little more? I just want to know if that is the way that the board would like to go. How would that manifest itself?
Are you, Madam Chair, may I speak? Lisa Photo?
Yes, you may.
Alderman Kelly, you are suggesting in future years so that we don't end up with a 20% or a 15% increase? Is that what you're?
Correct. Yes, I was
Okay.
responding to those.
I wanted to make sure I had I was answering your question. So we are working on that rate model right now. And what I would propose is that we come back yearly to this committee and show you exactly what that rate model is showing. And at that time, propose to you what we think that the increases should be yearly, so that we could even that out. And I'd like to get that rate model a little more developed before we present that to you. But I think by July, we should have that, and then we could come back to you and show you what we're thinking for increases in the future, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
I see Alderman
Anyone?
Dowd and Alderman Lopez.
Okay, Alderman Lopez first and then Alderman Dowd.
I just wanted to speak to Alderman Kelly's point. There's a responsibility on the part of the city staff to come forward with rate plan adjustments and what their proposals and what their suggestions are. And there's a responsibility on the Board of Aldermen to be attentive to the needs of the city as they unfold. So I would be a little bit reluctant to see something like a reverse spending cap where we automatically are raising fees without necessarily having a reason to do it, because one of the, I think, reasons why our sewer rates were much better than competitive over past years is because we basically only increased fees when we had need. And maybe we overdid that a little bit, but we are addressing that at this point. And I think it's important to make sure that aldermen are doing their job as aldermen and reviewing city budgets and those type of things. And I think this is a question that would typically come up in the budget season. We're just getting ahead of it in this particular situation. That was just my thoughts based on what Alderman Kelly had suggested.
Okay, Alderman Dowd.
Yes, just a couple things. First of all, for the record, so that it's in the minutes of the meeting and that the people listening can understand, we handle the wastewater for Tingsboro, Hudson, part of Merrimack. I'll go out on a limb and say that we collect some kind of fee for that. And I just think that the general public needs to be aware that, yes, we are not processing that at the goodness of our hearts. We are charging them. The other thing is that when you and I can fully understand direct to photo that you need time to develop that model, and I think that's a good idea. I think if we could project the rate increases 6 months in advance of when they're going to hit, big help, you know, because that's pretty important. The other thing I was thinking as this presentation was going along, Manchester decided to split their sewer and wastewater. And I was going to go out on a limb and say that's why their rates are that much higher, because it cost them a lot more money at the time, and maybe even to today. Is that true?
I have not studied their rates I don't know, Frank, if you know the answer to that question. I would have to do some homework to be able to.
Lisa, just a little bit on Manchester's system. Embarking on sewer separation is hundreds of millions of dollars, and that definitely factors into their rate increase and why it's significantly higher than Nashua's.
That answers my questions, Alderman Karen.
Okay, thank you.
And Madam
Anyone
Chair,
else?
Madam Chair, could I elaborate on that?
Oh, Certainly, Mayor.
Now, in commenting on that decision, I mean, I didn't really mean to be too critical. It was a hard, it was a hard call at the time. It might have been the right call, in the sense that the separation gets you, it might have been the right call. It costs less money, as Alderman Dowd just pointed out. And maybe in the end, it works. I mean, we are still not at 100% functionality in other words, the wet weather facility is not operating as well as it could and should. So that we're moving towards 100% operation, but that hasn't been achieved yet. The problem, the why this is it's not an easy decision to make, or, it was a tough call at the time, is that at some point separated sewers might require treatment as well, because stormwater is not totally clean, and that's going in a separated system right into the river. It's got salt, it's got road oil and other stuff that it catches, maybe fertilizer, I don't know, on the way to the sewers. So, it was, possibly the right call, but we might be forced to separate some of the city anyway. But we need just to try to do the improvements we need and try to keep costs to a minimum.
May I add to that? This is Frank Ayotte, the city's consultant on that. The mayor is right on that. The stormwater regulations that are now coming out are getting as stringent for treatment down the road, and will impact separated systems. They're called MS4 regulations. So separating the system, sewers and stormwaters, doesn't necessarily let you off the hook on stormwater now. Now there's new regulations on stormwater, and they include monitoring and sampling and potential treatment down the road.
Okay.
Alderman
Thank you.
Karen.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to respond to Alderman Lopez's remarks, and I appreciate his clarification. The intent is not to arbitrarily raise, but just be more cognizant. And I think what Director Photo said about checking in yearly can help us to better adjust so we don't end up with such large increases.
Okay. You've heard the presentation. You've asked your questions. So we have a motion before us concerning 0-20-40. Is there anything else from the committee? Okay, would the clerk please call the roll? Sean?
Did Alderman Jettie have his hand up?
I don't know.
Yes, he did.
Alderman Jettie, I apologize. I wasn't sure if that was new, or sometimes people accidentally leave their hand up.
Yeah, I had lowered it and then raised it again.
Go ahead, Alderman Jettie.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Hearing what the mayor and Mr. Ayotte, who talked about the the separation. Are you saying that that we are close to collecting all of the sewage and wastewater and stormwater, and it's all being treated at the treatment plant? So we're close to the point where nothing will be dumped directly into the river. If you're saying that, I feel a lot better.
I think all is a big word, but the wet weather facility is designed to collect as much as possible, from the storm and minimize the amount of overflow. Now, optimistically, we hope when we get the wet weather facility to 100%, it may eliminate the overflow. Certainly, it is already greatly reducing it, and may have the effect of eliminating overflows. But what Director Photo and all of our other people are advocating to the EPA and to DES is that we get to maximum, the maximum functionality of the wet weather facility, and then monitor to see if there are overflows. If there are, then take steps to eliminate those, possibly through separation of a section of the city or some other measure that would take care of those overflows. But certainly we are, with the wet weather facility, have greatly reduced any overflows into the river. And of course, that's good. We want the river to be as clean as possible. Any overflows also are hugely diluted, because any sewage that's there is diluted by hundreds and hundreds of millions of gallons of stormwater. So not to say that we still want to make it zero, but it's not as bad as it sounds.
Good. Well, that makes me feel better. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, before we take a roll call, Madam Clerk, Alderman Dowd would like to see a copy of the presentation sent to the full Board of Aldermen. If you could, please, Ms. Photo.
Yes, absolutely. We would be happy to do that.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Okay, will the clerk please call the roll?
Motion is for final passage of O 2040 by roll call. Alderman Clemmons.
Yes.
Alderman Lopez.
Yes.
Alderman Kelly is a yes. Alderman Karen.
Yes.
And we have 4 yays.
Okay, so that motion is carried. Thank you all for participating and providing the presentation to this committee. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for your time.
Okay, so now we're into public comment. Do we have anyone who has any comments to make? Alderwoman Kelly, do you see anyone?
I'm scrolling. There's several pages of people. I don't see anyone from the public here.
Okay, all right. Do we have general discussion?
I don't see anyone
None?
from the committee with their hand up.
Alderman.
Okay.
Oh, Alderman Wilshire, sorry.
Yes, that's okay. Thank you. Tonight's discussion was very interesting. I think it helped, a lot of us see what you were trying to explain to us at the last meeting. It was very well done. I appreciate that. And certainly nobody wants to see the rates go up, but we have a gem here in the city. I mean, we have, and it's expensive to maintain, and we have to maintain it. We have, we just have to. I mean, it's one of those things. And these are always hard decisions to make, especially, with some of Alderman Dowd's concerns about associations having their budgets all set. I mean, these things come up. We get a notice or from the EPA or whoever saying you have to do this, or just regular maintenance stuff we have to do is just very expensive. I mean, it's costly to operate that system. So thank you to everyone who put together the presentation. Thank you, Noel Osborne. You did a great job tonight. I haven't met you, but nice to meet you. So that's all I have. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Alderman Wilshire. Anyone else for general discussion?
Alderman Lopez.
Alderman Lopez.
Yeah, I kind of just wanted to echo what President Wilshire had said. I have no appetite for more public health apocalypses. So I think wastewater treatment is definitely something we need to be focusing on. I mean, they're still addressing issues, with Flint and all of that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I am conscious of the pinching of the purse, but at the same time, I don't have any faith personally that there isn't going to be something worse coming down the road. So, I mean, as aldermen, we do have to kind of make sure that we're keeping the city in good condition and, resilient enough to handle these kind of situations. I also wanted to point out that if there is a situation where we have to start modifying parts of the sewer overflow system, and I'm sure Director Photo could speak to this a little more knowledgeably, I would imagine they're mostly going to take place around the river, and the mayor does have some pretty significant plans for riverfront development, and it might be possible to integrate those in at some future point, assuming we don't have an underfunded and in the red wastewater treatment process. So, I mean, I think we have to move forward with this and just be attentive to what the needs are, both of the wastewater treatment facilities and sewer overflow, and also our taxpayers.
Okay, thank you, Alderman Lopez. Remarks by the Alderman. Anyone? Okay, I just want to say thank you to members of the committee and other members of the Board of Aldermen who put in their questions concerning the sewer fees in a timely manner so that it gave CFO Griffin and staff at Public Works to put this together. And I really appreciated the effort that they put in for their presentation tonight. As I said before, the wastewater treatment plant is in my neighborhood, and it's very important. It's a vital asset to the city, and we don't want anything to go down. My only criticism would be that I wish they had brought this legislation in September or October, so we would have been able to have this discussion in order to make these votes so that it would start in January as they requested. But other than that, thank you all for your time and patience. Anyone else? Okay, possible non-public session?
We have none.
Okay. Adjournment. Motion, Alderwoman Kelly.
I move to adjourn the personnel meeting by roll call.
Okay. Motion has been made to adjourn. Would you please do roll call? Thank you.
Alderman Clements.
Yes.
Alderman Lopez.
Yes.
Alderman Kelly is a yes. Alderman Karen.
Yes.
4 yeas.
Okay, and that motion carries. So the meeting is declared closed at 8:42 p.m. Thank you, everyone, for your participation tonight.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.